Hi, I'm Gordon Van Fleet, and today I'm going to show how to make a floating shelf and mount it on the wall. This particular shelf, we matched the surface to our countertop so that it blends in our showroom with the design aesthetic that we're trying to create. Whether you're doing this yourself in your home shop or you're hiring a professional or your contractor or carpenter to build it, you may find some tips and tricks so that you understand what's being done and you can get the shelf that you want. So throughout this video, there's going to be some tips and tricks kind of around general construction methods in the shop, different tools that you could use, whether you have your contractor, a carpenter do the work, or you're doing it yourself. There's some things here that you could learn and understand. So if you watch the video all the way through, you'll pick up these tips which you might miss otherwise. Okay, so the floating shelf that we're going to build, about 8.5 inches wide is the measurement I'm going to use, by about 30 inches long. So I'm just making a quick sketch. Here's 8.5 inches on that end, 30 inches long. And then we have the thickness of the piece, which is going to end up being about 2.25 inches. And then we're going to make a pocket in the back, which is going to receive the part that mounts on the wall. Okay, we're going to gather the materials and get started. Well, I've cut all the parts here. So starting, this is the cleat that will go against the wall in this pocket. Then I have a front and back frame member here and here. This one is longer, this one is shorter, and this is to allow for these side pieces to come in like this. So just illustrating, this wall cleat, when it's all done, will be back in this area. And then on top of that, we're going to put the top skin and then also the bottom skin underneath. And when we're all done, then we're going to take the two side pieces and laminate them on the sides. After that, we're going to laminate the front piece, and then we're going to put the top and bottom skin on there. All right, first I'm going to staple the sides right here. And I'm using professional tools. I'm taking my finger away from there, just so that staple doesn't come out the side and hit me in the finger. Okay, that's that side. Now I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. Okay, so this piece of wood is a little bit warped. That's not a problem. This piece is straight, this piece is warped. We have this gap. For good workmanship, I want that to be straight in the finished product. I'm using spring clamps. The pieces are kept even on the bench here and here. And so that's held straight. Okay, then the side pieces here are going to be kept flush with the back here. You'll note that this piece is a little bit shorter to allow adjustment on the wall. I'm just making a little indication mark here where the glue goes, and I'm going to do one on the other side. So I'm going to apply a little bit of glue in the area of those marks there, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. That's enough. I'm going to take this piece of wood here, just hold the pieces flush in the back. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Holding the pieces flush in the back. Pushing it down to the bench keeps it even, top and bottom. Okay. All right, now we're going to put the top and bottom skin on. So the first thing I want to do is mark it. So I'm going to mark the center of this back piece and draw a line down the length of it, and that'll tell me where I have to put my staples. Okay, this is a little bit long, that's okay. We're going to just sand that flush when we get this assembled. So now I'm going to put glue on this surface. So the first thing I'm going to do are a corner, holding it flush. I'm going to do the other corner here now. Then I'm going to hold the front edge flush. Again, pieces of material can be bent slightly. I'm pushing this in, holding it flush with my thumb. Another staple, holding this flush here. And again here, I'll put in a staple here, here, here. And now along this line, here, here. Okay. All right, now I'm going to put the plywood on the other side. Now, some people would question whether this is strong, and you can look on the internet and look up the term torsion box. And that's essentially what we're creating, is a torsion box, which is actually a very strong engineering piece. It's long, I guess an analog I would use is it's like a truss. Again, staple in the other corner. Here, here, here. Okay. Okay, now I note that I'm a little bit off in the back here. I'm going to take this whole assembly over the table saw and I'm going to trim off a little less than 1/8 of an inch there, and that'll make everything straight along the back. All right, that's pretty good. Let's see how that works. Okay, so now I'm going to sand both ends so that everything is flush to apply the laminate. After I do both ends, then I'm going to sand it top and bottom, but mostly this front edge so we can put the front edge on. And after the front edge and the two sides are on, then we'll sand the surface to apply the top and bottom surface. And that will complete the box. All right, there they are sanded flush on this side and on this side, and now we're ready to put the laminate on. Okay, so now we're going to put the left and right end on first. So I'll get these parts out of the way. I use this as a mask so that I'm not getting glue on all the surrounding areas. And here I hold a piece of cardboard so I can control the spray going back. It's one of the ways I help keep the shop clean. Now I'll do the other side. Okay, there's that sprayed. Now, if you were using this type of product at home, you can brush this on or roll this on with contact cement you can pick up at the home center. But because I use it every day, I have a spray setup. Also, I'm going to use the cardboard here to set these two pieces, the end pieces on, and I will spray them. Okay, those will take 3 or 4 minutes to dry, and then we'll be ready to put them on. Now, it's been a few minutes. This material is essentially dry to the touch, maybe a little bit tacky, the same thing here, but when we touch them together, they don't move again. So you have to make sure. I'm spacing this out with my fingers to make sure it overlaps a little bit in every direction. So that's on. I'm using a roller, and we roll it. And now, for those of you who don't know, this is a router, it's a tool. This is a cutting bit with a bearing. The bearing rides on here and it will cut this not quite flush with the surface. Again, we have this set up so that it just leaves a tiny bit so we don't damage the adjacent material. Now I'm doing the other side. It's also important, I had a customer did some of this work on their own and they tilted the router one way or the other but the bottom line is they damaged it because they did not hold this flush down. All right, now I'm going to go to the sander and sand this edge flush and this whole front edge so we can put that edge on. Okay, so now I've got that sanded flush. We're going to put this front edge on, which is this edge, goes right here. So again, starting right here at the end, I make sure that it's hanging over the end and top and bottom and on. Okay, it's good. Again, using my trim router all the way around. I am now going to use a bevel router on these two ends because that'll get a little closer. I can't sand that because I don't want to damage this adjacent surface. It's important with this not to roll around to the top edge because then you'd leave a radius here and you won't be able to get a tight fit when the top piece goes on. Now I'm going to use a belt sander to sand this flush all the way around the perimeter on both sides. All right, so I'm using a belt sander, but I don't want to stand over here and use the belt sander because this piece could shoot away. I don't want to use a clamp because the clamp will be in the way of my sanding. So I just stand behind it and you can see that it's braced against my body, and I'll sand this end and then I'll turn it around and sand the other end. You also note that I'm sanding so the direction is always pulling back into the laminate. I'm never sanding it like this because if I sand in this direction, it could leave a little chip on the edge and you won't get a smooth finish when you're all done. Now I'm turning it around and I'm going to sand this remaining portion on this side. Okay, I've got this piece of cardboard on the ground. When I do big pieces, I spray them down here. And by spraying it on the cardboard, I don't get glue all over my floor, and periodically I can change that. So now I'm getting any dust off the surface. I feel it with my hand because sometimes there could be a little piece of dust. You don't see it, but you can feel it. First, I'm going to spray the shelf. I'm spraying in this direction, which means I get a minimal amount of glue on the edges. Same type of thing as with the sander. Just have to pay attention to the direction. Now we'll spray the laminate. The key with the glue is just a thin, even coat. Could be full coverage, these little speckled patterns, that's fine. You just don't want a big puddle of glue or where glue's missing. Okay, so it's been a few minutes. Again, this is just tacky to the touch, could be dry. I'm going to show you a method. I can put this on without any help because I've done it a lot of times. But for larger pieces, I use sticks. So this isn't a large piece, but if you put sticks on like this, okay, then you can take the laminate and just drop it on and it's not going to stick. So usually I'm not that careless, but you put it on here, make sure it's hanging off the edges. And again, because I didn't have much laminate left, I only have about 1/8 of an inch side to side, not much. You have to be very careful. On the ends, I've got plenty of space, and again, I suggest you cut this oversized by 1 inch or so that it's easy. So I have it where I want it. I'm just going to put a little pressure here, pull this out, push it down. That's stuck. I don't want to twist it. I'm going to move down here, pull this out. That's stuck. And now I can lift this up, take out these sticks, and set it down. And now it's on in the proper position. I'm going to use this roller. I don't want to break the corners off, so you have to be careful where you put your pressure. Nice, firm, even pressure. This sticker is going to interfere with our ability to get a good finish, so I'm going to take that off. I'm using lacquer thinner, but any type of solvent probably will. This lacquer thinner is going right through the paper, and it's going to loosen up the adhesive. And then I'll just grab the edge here with a putty knife, and as the putty knife forces some of that glue underneath, and that sticker comes right off. Okay, I happen to have a vise right here, and I'm going to use that in a minute, but first I'm going to clean off a little bit of this excess. I have a putty knife, quite sharp. I usually keep my putty knives sharp so that they cut, and here there's a little bit of a burr that's hanging over the edge. Okay, any machine mill file will work for this. Now I'm using one made by Marnark Company. It has a rough side and a smooth side. It's important not to go backwards because you'll chip the laminate. It's important not to go like this because you'll chip the laminate. You need to go from the finished side to an unfinished side like this. Now I'm using a cabinet scraper. It's a piece of metal that has a burr on it, which is razor sharp. And I'm using that just to get off the remaining burr from the inside edge. So we want to have a screw go into the center of this, and this little notch doesn't matter, but it's not on this side, so we're going to go into the center of this, which is 5/8 of an inch, 1/2 of inch and a quarter. So I've put a piece of tape on the top here, and now I'm marking with a pencil. And the reason I'm doing it on the tape is because it's hard to see a pencil on this surface. And so I'm just going to draw a line down an inch and, or I'm sorry, 5/8 of an inch. So I use my finger as an indicator off the edge of the panel, and I can just draw right down the length of this part. Now I'm going to find the center of the part. Again, our shelf is 30 inches long, so 15 inches is in the center. I put an X, and then I'm going to come over, I think, 2.5 inches from either end. And that'll be to put the countersunk hole for the screw. Okay, so here's some tools. Going into the wall, we have to drill a hole through our wall block, and then this screw is going to come through this wall block, through the drywall or plaster, and then into a stud. So we're only going to have about that long into a stud, but with 2 screws, it's going to be adequate to support probably 30 pounds maximum. I'm probably only going to put about 10 pounds on there. Then I have this bit, which is going to go down through here and drive a pilot hole into this wood block. And now I can drill down in there. Okay, now I'm going to do my next hole here in the center. Again, holding it straight up and down, pushing the block in tight. And now I'll do the last hole at this far end. Okay, so we're going to mount the shelf in this area. I don't want it tight to this cabinet because I want to show off this finished end panel. This cabinet's 36 inch high. I'm going to put the shelf at the center of the shelf at 1/3 the height of this, so 12 inches from the bottom to the center of the shelf. And then the shelf itself is going to go probably about from here to here. We're gonna mark this on the wall, Then we're going to find the studs, and I know there's a stud. I'm thinking there's a stud right here, but you know, I can look down where the baseboard would be, or outlets. There's probably a stud on the left or right of this plug on the wall. But anyways, we'll find them, and we need to get 2 studs that it bridges so that we have a firm connection to the wall. So I'm going to start with my measurement from the bottom of this cabinet. This doesn't need to be perfect, but I'm putting a pencil mark lightly on the wall at 12 inches. Now our shelf is 2 1/4 inches thick, so 1 1/8 inches above that line, and 2 1/4, you know, again below that line. So now the top and bottom of my shelf are in this space right here. So the next step is locating the studs. So in this case, I can go down here to the baseboard and I can find a stud, which I can see there's a stud in this area. And so what I'm going to do is draw a plumb line up from that stud. So I could put wall anchors here and here, but I don't care if it's pushed over this way. I'm going to guess about 3 inches because I'd rather have 2 screws into 2 studs, be a little stronger. So that was the edge of the stud, come over 3/4 of an inch, should be in the center. I'm going to put a screw right about in that area, and about 16 inches or a little bit, we should have a stud also about there. Okay, so I'm taking a screw and I'm just going to drive it in where I want it to be, and I can tell there's a stud right there. I can feel it. So that's good. And now let's move over to this area and see if I also have a stud. And I can feel one there. Now you'll see that this block is shorter than the overall shelf. So here's the end of my shelf. And in this case, the shelf's 30 inches and the block's 28 1/4. So there's 1 3/4 inches left where this is shorter, and half of that is 7/8. Hopefully you followed that. So I'm just making a mark here. This is where I want the end of my block to be, and I've marked that. Now I've also marked, this is the top of the shelf with the holes, and so I've put an X on the shelf at the back. This X has to be visible when I screw it, because if I put it the other way, then these won't line up. So with the X out and the holes up, I'm putting my block adjacent to this mark. That's the end of it. And here's the hole I put in for the screw. So I'm making a mark there. And then down here, I'm making a mark. Okay, we're using a longer countersink bit to drill through here, the pilot hole for the screw, and to countersink it. Then I hold it on the wall where my mark is. It's centered between the top and bottom line, which is roughly where I want the shelf to go, and I'm drilling this hole. And I'm making sure it's countersunk properly, and I'm going to put that screw in now. I'm using fairly long screws. I believe it's 4 inches. Put it on my drill. I have a magnetic tip here which will hold that screw. And that's pretty firmly attached. That block is very firm. It doesn't flex at this end at all. I'm taking the shelf. The holes are on the top. Remember, those are pre-drilled. So you can see the shelf is where it needs to be. Just making sure it's lined up with the pre-drilled hole. I'm doing the one at the other end. Get firmly held to the wall. The last one in the center. thank you once again for coming and watching my videos. I make them for you, and hopefully we're addressing all of your concerns. It dawned on me while I was building and filming this that I'm doing all of this in a professional shop with tens of thousands of dollars worth of tools, which you may not have access to. This could also be done in a garage workshop with very simple tools. If I get some comments from viewers that say, hey, could you show us how to do a similar project or this project with basic tools that an average homeowner could afford or might have in their garage, I'd be happy to create a video doing just that. So please leave some comments or feedback. Again, if you subscribe and hit the notification bell, it will help you be alerted to our next video, and it helps us with the YouTube algorithm, and it all goes to making a successful channel. So once again, I hope you have a great week. Thanks so much for coming.